sign, according to the head of the HSE, before he adds a word of caution.
Our healthcare system won't see the benefits of this for some time to come. And for now, we have to continue with what still continues to be unrelenting pressure on our services across the board.
The HSE also confirms that the close contact testing programme will resume from tomorrow. Fresh concerns about our vaccine rollout after Germany says the Astrazeneca jab shouldn't be given to the over 65s. A new testing regime for hauliers heading to France, where new COVID rules have come into force.
I do Spain, but I have to go across France to go to Spain, so I have no choice, only come in for this.
And Josh Dunn's family and friends released balloons to remember a talented teenager who died in a stabbing this week. Those closest to him describe him as a dreamer and a doer. Good evening. Dr. Tony Holohan has said the country remains in a very vulnerable position in the fight against COVID. In his latest letter to government, the Chief Medical Officer warns that despite the recent progress, keeping up that level of suppression will be increasingly difficult to maintain. Elsewhere, the head of the HSE has said the current COVID numbers in the country's hospitals is the first hopeful sign in weeks, but adds the health system won't see the benefits for some time. It's also been confirmed that the testing of close contacts will resume tomorrow.
Some positive news in Ireland's ongoing battle against COVID-19 as hospital numbers continue to decline, while the number requiring critical care remains relatively stable. The Chief Executive of the HSE, Paul Reid, said this afternoon that it will take time before falling daily case numbers are fully reflected in the nation's hospitals.
There is a modest decline that we've seen in the numbers of people in hospital with COVID over the past few days, and that indeed is the first hopeful sign that we've seen in many, many weeks. And we really do hope, for everybody's sake, that this is the start of a trend. But I also do want to set out today that the healthcare system our healthcare system won't see the benefits of this for some time to come.
It was also confirmed today that Ireland will resume testing of close contacts from tomorrow after being suspended on New Year's Eve due to the high levels of infection in the country. It comes as updated vaccination figures for here have been published. The Republic of Ireland has now administered 161,500 doses of coronavirus vaccine as of last night. However, concerns remain about the supply of the Astrazeneca vaccine, with a dispute ongoing between the company and the EU about a shortfall in supply. A government TD says the relatively slow rollout of vaccines here is the EU's fault and that the country should be seeking its own vaccine supply outside of its EU allocation.
Europe have failed us on this. And anecdotal evidence suggests we were coming to the queue late because if we put our eggs, European eggs they are, into one basket in the development of a French vaccine that hasn't materialised just yet. And so whoever has a vaccine to put an end to this misery, we want their assistance and we want to be at the table.
Rob Hanrahan, Virgin Media News.
Right, staying with vaccines, and German health experts have recommended that the AstraZeneca dose only be given to adults aged under 64 and not to those in the over 65s category. Let's talk to our political correspondent Gavin Riley. And Gavin, the Health Minister Stephen Donnelly giving an update on vaccines earlier today. Is it known yet what sort of an impact this news from Germany is going to have on the rollout of our vaccination programme here?
No, it isn't known, Colette, and if you ask the Department of Health and you ask the HSE, they are keeping it very cool for now. They're waiting to see what the European Medicines Agency says tomorrow, and they will take the lead from that agency as to whether this AstraZeneca vaccine can be given to over 65s. But the combination of the prospect of that not being dispensable to over 65s and the idea that we would get far fewer than we expected certainly puts the cat among the pigeons as far as our vaccine allocation strategy goes. Not only did we expect to get 600,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, but it was built into the government's thinking that could be administered by GPs and by pharmacists and potentially even by dentists and given to everyone over 75 or over 70 or so. They are the next cohort after healthcare workers and nursing home residents who were in line for a vaccine. And if it can't be given to those people, then everything seems very much up in the air again. And that's why Stephen Donnelly today said he wasn't in a position to confirm whether it would still be possible to administer the vaccine to 700,000 people by the end of March, as was expected. On that note, there was also a slightly embarrassing moment today in the Dáil for Stephen Donnelly. He was asked how many doses of the Pfizer vaccine Ireland had received last week. He said the answer was around 40,000, but it became really in practice 48,000 because we're able to get 6 doses out of every vial instead of 5. But the HSE tells us that not only is that no longer the case, that Pfizer now expects you to get 6 doses out of every vial, and so they give you fewer vials, but actually last week's total was around 25,000. And very briefly, Leo Varadkar telling the Dáil today that even though it's only 2 days since we last changed our policy in international travel, could be up for change again. Ireland now considering an Icelandic model where people take 2 PCR tests within 5 days of arrival and quarantine in between.
Gavin, thank you very much for that update. So, as we heard there, a big decision due tomorrow from Europe on the Astrazeneca vaccine. Our economics correspondent Paul Coggan is here. And Paul, ahead of that decision from the European Medicines Agency, where are we in terms of the amount of doses and jabs administered in this country?
Europe is lagging way behind the UK and America in terms of doses administered, about 160,000 to date here. It might be slightly higher than that depending on when all the nursing home data comes in, but it's a quite small percentage of the population has received vaccinations compared to the north, for example, where around 9% have received the vaccine to date. The EMA are due to issue this decision tomorrow, and there's been straws in the wind for the past week or so. Last week, an Austrian newspaper reported that they may consider making the same decision that the Germans have recommended today and not allowing it to be, or not recommending that it be administered to people over the age of 65. Emer Cook, who heads up the EMA, hinted that that might be a possibility earlier this week. We'll have to see, but it really would put back our vaccination programme. We could get to the middle of February, all those doses from AstraZeneca could arrive, around 300,000 we're told, and we're not able to give them to people over the age of 65. So that raises the possibility the government has to administer to other age groups, which really knocks the vaccination programme sideways. However, it's not that the vaccine is not effective, it's that some people have concerns they haven't seen enough data yet. So it could be the case that if the EMA does decide not to go the full hog tomorrow, it might say we'll review this mid-February when we get more information about how AstraZeneca's vaccine is performing out there, because many, many people have received it in the UK to date. So it might be the case that by the time we get the doses, we're in a position to administer them. But we have to see what the EMA does tomorrow. All
right, Paul, thank you very much for that update. Well, as we heard earlier, the HSE has confirmed that close contact testing will resume tomorrow. The programme was suspended at the peak of the current COVID wave because of the sheer volumes involved. Well, our reporter Zara King is at HSE headquarters for us this evening. And Zara, a pretty immediate resumption then.